Okay, I think we should just kick it off. And if people show up a little late, they can always just catch on or watch the first part later. So just as
Great.
a little introduction, we have Sophie and Alexis who graduated in 2020 this past year. Sophie's scope in town, and Alexis is as well at Live Well. I think they both have these like really diverse backgrounds, and I think they'll be able to explore their backgrounds and how that led them into the positions they are in now. So thank you for joining tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This is a fun little way to, I don't know, just share our experiences and kind of get back involved with school, even though we've left. Sad,
Yeah.
but we're gone.
Yeah, and as we go through this, we want it to be super conversational. So Sophie and I'll switch off and on. But if you guys have questions as we go, feel free to stop us and ask. I think that'll probably be the easiest way.
Sweet.
So just a little bit about us.
So if you couldn't tell, we're friends. That's both of us in the picture. No, so I thought we'd kind of both go over how we kind of got into design. So I kind of like to describe how I got into this field kind of with a classic millennial career paralysis. So I had family in medicine, and in high school, I just was interested in a lot of different things, spanning from engineering to art. I was really good at drawing things, making things from a young age, and I just felt like I didn't want to pick. It was just all very stressful, and I thought it was, so unfair that I had to choose one thing. So I kind of chose industrial design in a way to not choose, to be able to kind of do all the things I loved. And I had been aware of kind of companies like Ethicon and, Stryker and different places that did medical device design. So I thought, maybe down the line I could give that a shot. And, I've kind of learned that, we'll go into this later in the slide, but I'm kind of a huge proponent in staying, T-shaped or just kind of like a deep generalist. I kind of didn't really specialize, so to speak, in school. But I think companies are more and more looking for these like adaptable generalists, to be able to solve really any creative problem. I feel like products are coming out quicker, and we just want faster insights. And I think the more you can develop your skills to create a product that serves every user need and just successfully communicates that story, it's better to have kind of that wide range of skills to be able to be applied to different industries. So yeah, that's a bit of background on myself.
And for me, I actually wanted to be a transportation designer. And if you asked anybody that we graduated with, they would not know that, because that's very, very far from where I've landed after 5 years. But I found out pretty quickly I didn't love visualizing things. I don't love deep CAD. I can sketch things to get across an idea, but I'm not somebody that would render in Photoshop or sketch renders quickly or effectively as my peers. But I was really good at understanding the human experience and kind of the empathy that goes with that. So I found a lot of passion in research. And I would also say that, like Sophie mentioned, with being a generalist, I like to think outside of just one problem, but the experience overall. So whether that's packaging on the shelf to how they'd open it, how they would use the product, if it breaks, what happens, and then disposal. So thinking in the whole end-to-end experience realm. So if you asked me now, I definitely don't think I'm an industrial designer. I wouldn't claim that, but sometimes if I'm asked, I would say an experience designer, because I like to think about these bigger experiences and whether that translates into a physical product or a digital experience. I'd be happy to design for either of those things. I don't like just product design or just graphics, but I do kind of blend across those realms into holistic experiences.
So like Mira said, I'm currently an associate industrial designer at Kaleidoscope Innovation. So we are a consultancy first and foremost, and then we also have a business within our consultancy that does on-site services. So we will implant some members of our staff and hire people to kind of work on site at other companies to kind of, make sure that our process and our efficiency that we kind of, we bleed in the consultancy can be put into other companies and hopefully bring work back to the consultancy. So I think that's a really clever business model. So with that being said, we are a full-scale development consultancy with medical, consumer, and industrial products. So we work all across the spectrum of different industries. We really preach collaboration. There are like 0 walls in our office. Sometimes that gets hard, but we, without having each other to lean on for the different kind of parts throughout that development process, we would never get anything done. So we're kind of a building full of experts and with tons of diverse backgrounds. And it's all very important to have each and every person that we have in the building there to make it a successful product. The thing I love about Kaleidoscope as well, one of the many things, is we have a lot of resources in terms of capabilities. So we have an advanced prototyping shop. We have all types of testing labs, usability testing, electrical engineering labs. We have a wet lab where we actually can test products on cadaveric and animal tissues. So that's something Mira, I know, got to experience during her time at Kaleidoscope, which is very different if you don't have exposure to that early on, but it's kind of fun. I always really enjoyed that part of the early onset testing of prototypes. I think seeing your product in context is like such an invaluable experience as a designer, and I would encourage everyone to do that more often. And yeah, so I've been there for almost a year now. I co-op there in my last co-op, and I've had a ton of fun, and I just learned something new every day. And I think it's pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I think any job you take outside of school, I would encourage you to find a place that kind of does that. So yeah, let Alexis talk about Live Well.
Yeah, so I am also, like Sophie just said, I'm at Live Well. I actually did not co-op there. I purposefully avoided it because I didn't want to be in Cincinnati. So to find myself here after graduation was kind of a twist of fate. But basically, as a project lead, well, as a fellow, I am a project lead. We lead 2 projects a semester, so I'm on half time each, so 20 hours to each project. And they're multidisciplinary teams that range. So one project I'm working with 4 designers. Another project I'm working on, I'm leading with 16 other people, and there's business students, engineers, graphic and industrial designers. So basically super collaborative. Like Sophie said, Live Well has actually, what I've really enjoyed is it's given me the opportunity, like I said, to think about the experience more in the research, planning, all of that, doing the planning for the research. How do you get from point A to point B? So when you start a project, you get the brief and you have only a semester's length time to get to the end result. So how can you get there? What activities should you be planning and leading your team through and facilitating? So that's been great. And then also some of the projects I've gotten to do digital and print with graphics, and other projects I've been making scrappy prototypes, and we're doing user testing where we're putting it in their hands and letting them play with it and getting feedback. So really broad across the spectrum, which has been great. Also, if you're really interested in research, facilitating workshops or being part of workshops is really great. So finding resources online, translating them, building your own activities so that you get the insights you need to refine your prototypes or ideas further, and then getting to interact with people and talk to them in interviews has also been really awesome. I think that's all I'll say for Live Well. So how we got here, like I mentioned, I wanted to be a car girl. So I started at an automotive job, which is Bilstein shock absorbers. That was more of a traditional industrial design job. I have a passion for marketing and branding. So I actually got a marketing minor. So my second co-op I also did with Bilstein, but I went to their marketing department in San Diego and interned there. So I was operating like social media accounts, doing some more of their experiential things with expos and events. And then my third co-op pivoted to Landor, where I pitched them on myself, having this ID background where I can make products, but then also understanding the marketing and branding side of things, so merging both of those. So I was the only industrial designer on the team at Landor, but I was in the brand experience team. So we were pretty much taking the digital brands that the designers, the graphic designers were creating and figuring out how to make them interactive. Was it an in-aisle interaction, or is there another way to digitally translate and make it more of an experiential process? Which makes sense how I got to my fourth co-op, which was Deep Local, which is also experiential. but they're doing a lot more of experiential like events and types of things where they're using robots to bring tech-based experiences to life. So a lot of projects for like Netflix, Google, companies that operate fully online, but they still want you to experience their products in real life and understand what they can do for you and the benefits. And then after getting through all of those, I realized I wanted to do more in the research or grow my research skills. And I had in my portfolio already framed out projects with a research frame of mind. I just had never had pure experience in research. So that's why I wanted to go to a place like Clorox, where I got to focus on that pretty holistically. And I would say that that experience is why I got the fellowship at LiveWell, is because I had that research and facilitation background. But
Yeah, and then so my first co-op was at a consultancy called Techna in Michigan. It's in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Very fun, kind of Midwestern town. It was a great place to have the first co-op. Everyone was very welcoming. The team was small, and like, you know, everyone just was willing to kind of teach. And it, you know, with it being a consultancy, we worked on consumer products, but also with Stryker being in the area, I got to work on medical as well. So it was a nice balance. And I think you know, I didn't know how much I valued that, having both sides of kind of different industries until later on. But so next I decided to kind of try big corporate and just go kind of gung ho for the medical device side. So I worked at DePuy Synthes in Boston. So they do sports medicine and spine products. So that's a nice kind of balance, right? You know, sports medicine tools are very, you know, heavy duty, bulky. Spine is very, you know, dexterous and a lot of different kind of delicate handwork there. So different ergonomic challenges, and really got to focus on kind of technical CAD and prototyping at that job. And then Clorox was my third. So Alexis and I have that in common. I didn't want to count out those kind of different front end research skills and just be able to kind of hone in more on the consumer side. So that was really interesting. I really did like the work there, and I think it helps me with kind of the more insights and front end work that I do now at Kaleidoscope. And then I worked at a startup kind of as a freelance designer for my fourth co-op. I actually had an epic fall on study abroad. So I tore my ACL and things kind of got thrown up in the air with plans. So I kind of had to find a different, more flexible option that allowed me to have surgery that semester. So I was able to kind of secure that job and you know, work with someone who's kind of in the first cohort of 18-19. So that was very cool to kind of at-home smart rehabilitation sports medicine device. And then Kaleidoscope was my last co-op, and I loved it so much that I'm here for a full-time job.
so the next portion of the presentation is things we wish we knew when we were you guys, or things that we're actively learning right now. So if you have questions on these, definitely ask.
Yeah. So yeah, in hindsight, we kind of did this by, you know, in college, what we wish we knew and kind of now. So my first point is kind of learn from one another. There's plenty of time in your career to be competitive. And I know some people, you know, being competitive, it helps, it kind of lights a fire underneath you. But I think this is the largest design team you're going to be on probably in your life. So take advantage of that, like take advantage of people being willing to share with you still. I think I had one advisor tell me once, like, that I seem teachable. I want to learn. I kind of make it easy for them, but not everyone in your career is going to want to do that, unfortunately. Like, I just think, you know, stay teachable, stay hungry to learn for as long as you can, and really use your colleagues around you and your, you know, that student card. You know, once you become a professional, it's a little bit harder. So yeah, definitely take advantage of that. In general, just ask more questions. I don't know. I feel like I've always been in situations where I think I'm going to be, you know, look stupid. But I think asking more questions just helps you in the long run. You know, especially with your skills, I think like getting more in depth about how, you know, CAD or different programs, like asking how people did something and just getting into the nitty gritty. I think it'll help you and help enhance your portfolio and your work subsequently to school. Follow your interests, even if they seem to go against the grain. I think, you know, a lot of the times in school, you see kind of these like sexy renders and you think you should be doing what everyone else is doing. But I think good design you know, it can be applied in different ways. And I think it's just at the end of the day, solving a usability problem. And I think that's what like sexy design is to me now. I think I didn't really understand that as a student, and you kind of just want these eye-popping things. But I think, you know, the best designers just really are able to tie an entire story and every decision about a product or a device or an experience back to a story about a user. And I think if you just remember that, you'll have like fantastic work. And then one that I wish I would have really done more is just talk about your work, like talk about it as much as you can, you know, pitch to your friends, pitch to other people, just talk about your portfolio. It just makes everything easier. You know, I just, if you don't practice it, it's just not going to come off as easy. So that's just another big point. And then just take a break and enjoy this time, and, you know, stop thinking so, this is something I would tell myself, just stop thinking so future forward. I think, you know, some of the best moments and like learning opportunities, I just went because a friend was begging me to go, and like they didn't want to go alone. And I was kind of like, oh, I'm busy, or I have to think about other things. But it really like boiled down to just like enjoying the opportunities on campus and enjoying the people there, and taking advantage of like all the different educational happenings in a university setting. So kind of both on a social, just friend and like memory side, but also an educational side. I think like just taking a mental break is really helpful.
And then this point kind of builds on Sophie's first point of taking advantage of being a student while you can, because this is when people want to help you. So especially in your capstone semester, reach out to as many people as possible, talk to them about your project, ask for help, ask for resources. People will give you resources or try to help you in any way that you can. I know one of our friends told me to do this and I was definitely too scared, but you should. If you are looking in a specific area, find somebody that's an expert in that area on LinkedIn and just message them. Tell them about your project, ask if they'll meet with you to talk about it. And that's a great way to get expert feedback and inform your project even more. Also, a point to that is right now, this is going to sound bad, but it is a good thing. People don't see you as competition. They see you as someone that is learning. Whereas once you graduate, the further you get, the more people will see you as competition, unless they'll want to share with you because they feel like they have to protect their own skills or their own job. So this is really the time where you can ask so many questions to anyone, and they're probably going to give you an answer, which is great. To generalize or to specialize, I feel like is always the big question. And it really is up to you and your skills. Like if you are a fantastic renderer and you just want to draw cars or sketch shoes all day, like so be it. That's your skill and that's great. Obviously don't not grow other skills because that's all you focus on. But if it's your specialty and you can really sell yourself as that, do so. If you want to generalize. You don't have to be the best sketcher or the best person at CAD or the go-to person. You can just be a generalist that people can rely on to get a job done, which is also a skill in itself. You'll still, like Sophie mentioned before, being T-shaped, you're going to have something that you're better in that you can sell yourself as, but having general skills that people can rely on and expect you to deliver is also very marketable. Being strategic with your projects. I wish I had done this earlier. I definitely did it with my capstone and maybe a little bit before, but if you know skills that you want to learn or softwares you want to learn, build it into your projects so that you have to learn it while doing it, because that's the best way to learn those things. And this is when you have the time to watch all the video and tutorials and learn and mess up, and it absolutely doesn't matter. Yeah, Sophie.
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna say that's like probably one of the biggest things that I've learned after graduation or after capstone. Like your capstone specifically, like build it not only like for the job you want, but like what skills you want to show. Like it doesn't even matter what the storyline is or the research. Like I'll make the research up. It's just like, you know, I'm not endorsing that, but like the skills is like, it's, you know, a showcase of your skills really. So whatever skills that you think you need to get to the job you want, you know, do a project that's going to do that. Anyway, yeah. It seems so simple, but
Actually, may I ask a question? Oh, so sorry.
You may, Mira.
No, yes, what's the question?
I think that's like such a great tip, and it's hard in the moment to convince yourself that you like have the affordance to take that time and learn that skill. So I was wondering, what are examples of skills you learned along the way while in the midst of projects throughout DAAP or your capstone?
I have a great example, so I can take this one. My senior capstone, I did around biomaterials, and I have no biology background. I literally no experience at all. Just I was doing research and I was like, this is super cool. I want to learn more and I want to know how to do this or how other designers are doing it because they're obviously making it work somehow. So my capstone summer, I took the sustainable studio with Dale and I basically force fit biomaterials into the studio and spent the entire summer learning how to make biomaterials. And then for my capstone, use the biomaterials I made for the project that I delivered by the end of the semester. So if you can be strategic, that's obviously like an extreme example. But if you know that you could build things in, like why not just find the room? Your professors, they want you to learn and grow as much as possible, and if your professor, most of them are hands off in a good way, like they'll let you take the project and run with it and do what you want as long as you're doing something. They'll be pretty okay with it, I'll say. They may disagree with
that. Use a file structure. Big one.
Yeah, I just opened one of my previous portfolios and I realized I hadn't packaged it. So then I had to go back and find all of the individual images from before. So if you could use, I remember Aaron Recker telling us to use a file structure like second year, and I had no idea what that meant. I was like, what do you mean? And now looking back, I picked it up maybe Power Tool Studio, and I'm so glad I did. It's improved over time, but if you have a file structure, find it, use it forever, and it'll make your life so much easier. I promise.
Keep those links organized, people.
Yes. And then make the most out of every co-op. So obviously, sometimes you don't get your dream job, like Beth says, but if you're not getting to do the work that you want to do at your job, if you have an intern project or they give you any opportunity to explore things on your own, use that time to build the skills that you want. So that kind of goes back to being strategic. Like at Deep Local, I realized I wanted to do like UI UX work, but I wasn't getting UI UX work at that job. So my intern project was just building screens for a previous project I had worked on. So if you, again, your mentors at your co-ops, they want you to grow. That's why they brought you onto the team. So if you have any suggestions or ways that you could build skills you're interested in, feel free to talk to them about it.
So yeah, in hindsight from how far we've gotten in the real world, so I've learned, I think efficiency and time management is everything. You know, it's not school anymore where you can work till midnight and then kind of like wake up late the next day. Like this is, 8 to 5 or whatever your time is at your full-time job. It's, consistency that goes to the next point, but it's just, you have to be consistent on your game all the time. And that means, not overdoing things, kind of knowing and getting that intuition to know exactly what is enough to communicate what you're trying to show, in the different stages of a project. And I think that comes with time, definitely. My boss is like so good at that. And I'm, I just kind of try to emulate him. But it definitely comes with time. But I would say consistency in the sense of kind of being consistent in how and the quality of what you deliver. I think that's probably why, that in communication, I think why I was hired on as a full-time employee. I think being able to keep communication with the client open and just always keep them abreast of what you're doing, and then also just delivering quality work and kind of not dropping the ball in that sense. It's very important in industry, especially in a consultancy where you're constantly kind of having to sell your service. There's no kind of lax deadlines. It's, you have to be on your A game all the time. And then like I said, it takes time to build up that instinct as a professional. I think the more projects and experiences you have, the better you get at this and the better you kind of innately know that process and kind of what a project needs to be successful. And then a big point, I think true growth happens when you're out of your comfort zone. So, I think the past couple months I've been really pushing myself to do work on skills that I'm not necessarily, perfect in. And I think while it's, makes me a bit uncomfortable and I definitely have to ask for help, I think it only helps you grow. And then one big thing I think Kaleidoscope really values is you can contribute good ideas at any age level and from any functional business unit. So, we have people in engineering who have stepped up and said, hey, I want to make a marketing video for us that kind of shows everything from our front end insights, human factors to our, green screen VR visualization capabilities. And I want to make this video in my, kind of free time or, on my unbillable time. And they're like, yeah, okay, go for it. So I think from any discipline and any age, you're able to kind of contribute to an organization. And I would say look for a company that values that.
Yeah, and then from my point of view, I said be scrappy. Especially as students, you obviously don't have a lot of resources. If you do, you're super lucky. So get scrappy with it. If you have to make a white box for photos out of core foam, do it. Like there are just so many ways that you can be resourceful and not have to spend a lot of money to convey a good idea. That also leads to my second point of do the least to get the most. I think especially now working with co-ops and doing research at school, you always get to refine to get to this final presentation. But in reality, most of the time it's not like that. You just need the bare bones of something to convey an idea and get feedback on it. And constantly going back to how can I do this as quickly as possible, but get the most out of it, I think is super important. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it probably never will be. So don't strive for that. Question each other. I think a lot of times it's easy to just follow the leader in projects, and you should definitely not do that. A leader probably doesn't want you to do that. They want you to ask questions and question, why are we doing this? What's the purpose? What's the goal? Because if you're asking those questions, it helps reorient the entire team and focus on what's actually important and why you're doing something, which is super valuable. And that, again, builds on speak up. Don't be afraid to speak your mind. Especially in a job, you're being hired for your opinion as a designer, and that's why they're paying you to be there. Obviously, you bring skills to the table too, but our opinion is half of who we are. And then make a plan, even though nothing will go as planned. So especially we can talk about this from having capstone in the middle of a pandemic where everything was like, are we online? Are we in person? Is the show in real life? Are we doing it digitally? You still have to make a plan, even though it's absolutely going to hit the fan anyway, just to have something and then have a backup plan. And I promise you'll feel better about it. It just like grounds you a little bit. And then we're all just figuring it out. Every co-op, I thought I would get a new company and they would have it figured out. Like I would go and it would be seamless and they would be like the model of what we should strive to do. And that's just not the case. Like no company out there has it figured out. They've got pieces figured out that work, but there's still problems. There's always going to be problems. So talk about it and build a network amongst friends and coworkers. Like I message someone from our class almost every day about what he's doing for research because I'm learning from him and he'll ask me questions and I'll tell him what I'm doing. So it's just like this open communication where you can all improve your skills together. That doesn't go away. And so for this slide, we wanted to talk about burnout, which to preface, we are both workaholics and not in a good way. Like we wouldn't say be a workaholic. We both hate that we're this way. So
I have one point on the slide because I'm worse than Alexis. I let her take the brunt of this.
Tell it, Sophie.
Okay.
What's your point?
My point is to have a long career. You got to take care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that's not a lie. You heard it here first. No, but in all reality, like, you can work yourself to the bone, but how sustainable is that? And, I think if you really ask your teammates and your the company that hires you and you say, hey, like I need a mental health day, or I have a doctor's appointment, like I have to leave early, like everyone wants you to be well and like to be able to come in the next week. Like they don't want you to, there might be hard deadlines, but at the end of the day, like if you're not there and fully present, it's just not going to be good for the company. So they want, you know, I think generally most people and organizations like want you to care for yourself. And I think, yeah, I'll let Alexis go into this, but I think it's like a lot about setting boundaries and just making sure you keep clear communication.
I would also say that they want you to have a life outside of work because that's what makes you interesting, if that makes sense. Like, I hate going to lunch sometimes and all we have to talk about is the project because none of us have done anything. Like, your passions and things you do outside of work also help you build relationships and inform your perspective as a designer. So investing in hobbies and passions outside of work is super important, but that's a parallel. So one tip that I found this semester specifically, carpool is a great reason to get out of the building. So if you have to carpool in and carpool out, you can't stay and work late, which is just like a life hack I found. Finding your people in the office that you feel like you can talk to and have an open dialogue with is really important, and talking about the problems that you're seeing. Happy hours are great for getting people like to loosen up a little bit and feel comfortable sharing those things. Team walks after lunch is also awesome at like that 2 to 3 window when everybody just wants to take a nap. Great to like get out, talk, see the sun, do good things. Like Sophie mentioned, being the example you want to see. So especially in certain companies where the leadership isn't necessarily setting the example, like they're staying and working long hours, or everybody kind of sets that as the culture in the office. Don't do that. Don't just cave. Be what you want to see, because if everybody's following them because they're seeing it, it's not going to correct the issue. And set boundaries. It can be really hard to stick to them, but like turning your notifications off or refusing to respond to an email that you got at 4 a.m. in the morning or 11 p.m. on a Saturday, like, you just have to set boundaries for yourself, even if your coworkers aren't. And many hands make like light work, which grandma Sophie said this was a grandma quote, but it's true. It's so easy to feel like you have to take on all of these responsibilities, but if you're stressed, tell someone about it, and so many people on your team would be happy to take 1 or 2 things from you, and it goes so much faster than you trying to stress your way through all of it.
I think it also helps because you're technically like sharing your strategy like more often. So if you're trying to get someone up to speed on your work, you're presenting it and you're, you know, sharing your whole workflow. So I think it's just helpful in and of itself. And, you know, sometimes I think like, oh my gosh, like it's just gonna be so much easier if I do this rather than like get someone up to speed and do it. But in reality, I think like in that sense, it does help.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, we touched on this a little bit, I think, before, but you know, the question of specializing, or kind of what, you know, micro function within industrial design, like do I pick, and you know, do I have to pick one? I think a lot of what an industrial designer is right now today is like very blurred. I think at different companies, your role can be a myriad of things. It can be a lot of things or just one thing. I totally respect the want and desire to be specialized. And I think as long as you don't necessarily, I guess, specialize in just a skill and more kind of like a, you know, it could be a skill, but it's more of like a skill and like a knowledge of an industry and how you apply it. I think like when you specialize too much, you kind of get into this rut of, you don't really like apply strategic thinking with your skills. You just kind of like do the one skill and you like just repeatedly, you know, put out work. And I think like, you know, we can get contractors and, you know, get people outside of a team to kind of be robotic about stuff and like just kind of, you know, generate stuff. And if that's like what you want to do, that's fine too. But I think if you kind of gather all of your different experiences and kind of make yourself T-shaped and, you know, you have those skills, but you also have the context of which they're applied, and you kind of are wise about how you use them and when, I think that really makes someone a great designer, in my opinion. But Alexis may have a different opinion.
No, I feel like I have similar opinions, but I also want to say that I added this, you'll probably have more than one career. And I think that's just, design is growing so much and diversifying. Like, you're not stuck in a bucket. You can hop between disciplines. I think the important factor in that is you just have to have good baseline skills. So if you have a really solid base, You can learn from the people around you when you're in a job. So like Sophie's learning from engineers. I am learning from the business students that are in my class. Like you can learn from those people and start applying those skills and grow them over time so that you do diversify, and eventually you'll diversify enough that maybe if you want to make a leap into a different line, you could, and it's totally fine.
And who wants to do one thing their whole life? That's just, I don't.
Losers.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, losers.
No. I think that's it for this one. So we're nearing the end, but we wanted to talk, I'm sure most of you have seen this. It was from Yanko Design about females in design. And basically we just wanted to talk about, I guess, sexism in the workplace and inclusivity. And pretty much what you'll see and maybe experience, it's definitely not new, but it is still happening. And the only way we're going to get through it is if we talk about it and stand up for each other. So I'll pass it to Soph.
Yeah, so I guess this is kind of just, it's now time to change that narrative. And I think more and more, while Alexis said this is nothing new, I think people are, we're recognizing it more. And I think your generation and our generation were like demanding more that these things are mitigated and that we don't have to deal with this anymore. And I think like there's been a lot of great conversations happening throughout the design industry and just like product development and typically more male dominated industries more often today than there was, in the past. And I think that's great, but I think we also need to kind of hold ourselves accountable and continue to kind of push for that standard to be upheld. But I think, good design, like I said here, good design serves people, and to serve people accurately, you need to acknowledge and implement diverse perspectives. So, if you have a company of all the same person, you're not going to create products that serve and are successful, that serve the population. So I just think inclusive design is good business. And that's something I actually just listened to a talk yesterday. It's the redesigned speculum, the frog design, two girls, or I think it's 4 girls total from Frog Design, developed a new speculum for pelvic exams. And that was one of the quotes that I heard from yesterday. And I think it just really stuck with me because I think it's very true. But like I said, we have kind of this responsibility to address these barriers and obstacles faced by kind of minority groups and women. And I think, we have to hold each other accountable for sure.
So we just basically put,
no, go ahead.
We put together just some like high level bullet points of ways to actively make change in your organization. So first of all, holding people accountable, whether that be transparency, asking hard questions. Like this is from, what's the consultancy, Soph?
This is from Grand Studio that I saw that I thought was really interesting that they put this on their public website.
That they put this on their website, but you can ask these questions in an interview, or like if you are in a position where you're looking around the studio and there's only one guy on the project or only one girl on the project, you can ask your manager and be like, hey, when we go to hire, maybe this is something we should take into consideration, like X, Y, and Z thing. I think wages is also important and a really touchy subject. And when we were in school, we had a women in design conference, or not conference, just like a talk similar to this. And it was really interesting because one of the girls was talking about it and she's like, my husband is an industrial designer. We have the same skill set. He graduated the same year as me and they're married, like background. They talk about their salaries, obviously, because they're married. And she's like, I went and applied for the same job and they offered him X amount of money more than they offered me. And obviously, all of the other pre-qualifications are the same. So the only differing factor is that he's a man. If you can have those conversations, which are uncomfortable with your peers, say the people that you're graduating with, I was just applying to a job and I knew a guy in the field and I asked him what he was making to set as a benchmark for what should I be asking. So like you're holding each other accountable and asking for what you deserve, rightfully. Do you want to talk about top down, bottom up?
Yeah, so I think oftentimes when people, and even like currently, when we talk about this issue or kind of what we can do to make this better, a lot of people grapple with like, oh, does it have to come from management, or can I lead this charge? And I honestly think it's both. I think, you know, we need the kind of people on the ground to really support that message. But I also think that if your managing staff isn't, you know, on board with this, you don't even really want to be there in the first place. Like, I don't know. I think Alexis said something, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. I was on a call with someone who reached out about just kind of going over their portfolio. Someone I had never met before, and they asked kind of that classic question: do you want to put your photo on your website or like on your LinkedIn or resume? And, you know, I didn't really have a preference. I was kind of like, whatever you're comfortable with. But she said something really interesting where it's like, if someone, you know, looks at your photo and they don't want to hire you, then do you really want to be there anyway? You know, someone who kind of, you know, if you were going to judge you by your photo, then like, why do you want to work for these people? And I thought that was like, you know, just hit them where it hurts, you know? But yeah, so that's just kind of was something interesting. So.
Yeah, I would also say in conversations, especially at work or in team meetings, if you can tell that someone is bulldozing over other people's conversations because they just don't have respect for them, this is where it comes in. You can be an ally and either step in and say something, or this is going to sound bad, repeating their point to make sure that it's heard, and then having a conversation later about the fact that this person keeps bulldozing other people. So if you see stuff happening in the office, tell someone about it. Don't just, or even talk to the person that it's happening to and be like, do you feel like this is an issue? If yes, like, let's talk about it and figure out how we can overcome it. Do you want to talk about the other one? The next one?
Yeah, so amplify that point. Are we on that point?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just kind of in general, amplify underrepresented voices. I think, like, you know, that comes in with hiring, and that also comes in with just in general day-to-day things. If you notice, kind of like Alexis was saying, if you notice something happening or someone not effectively being heard, obviously that's an issue, and that's gonna kind of like trickle throughout the company. So that's important. And then I think, you know, my company now, and I think a lot of companies, we encourage you to like reach out into your network to hire people and reach out to classmates and stuff. And I think sometimes, I think I just had a conversation about this, but we think of like-minded people. You know, we're kind of friends and colleagues with like-minded people, and you know, as much as, you know, you want to trust your colleagues that they know great people and great employees to bring on, sometimes the best candidate is ones you don't think of or you don't have in your network already. So I think, you know, while it's important to bring in people who are vetted, I think like going outside of that comfort zone of where you typically find people, I think is like a really great practice, and something I think every company could do better at.
Yeah, and I just added in this last point of educating yourself, especially in research. I've found a lot more blogs recently of just thinking about inclusivity for design and how you're either framing questions or surveys, or how you're recruiting for people to make sure that you are getting access to underrepresented communities or people we don't hear from. And if you think about it, research is the beginning of the design process, and that really sets the stage for how a product can be developed. So making sure that's as inclusive as possible is really important, and you just have to do the due diligence and learn from others, read blogs, talk to other people about approaches they're taking.
Yep. So these are just like helpful links that some of these are fairly new, but some of them, you know, have been around for a while. But different links for like allyship guides, and like how you can kind of check in with yourself and your company and just make sure that you are holding these standards, and you're kind of holding yourselves and your colleagues accountable. A lot of toolkits, so like different practices you can implement within a business or a school. And then there's a test from Harvard. It's a biases test. I think it was really interesting. Sometimes, you know, you just have to check in with yourself and make sure those aren't like dictating your decisions. Implicit bias tests. Yeah. And I know the Facebook group below we linked is the Women in Design Facebook group. So it's also helpful kind of place to chat.
Share job opportunities.
Yep.
But
that's all we got.
Do you guys have any questions?
I do. My name's Haley. I'm a third year, so ID 23. I think like recently I've discovered that I also am very much enjoying like the research and innovation phase of this. Do you have any recommendations for like elective classes that you took or heard about like through the whole university? Like I was scrolling through today and the university offers so many classes, like I don't even know where to start looking for those.
Trend research.
Trend research? Okay.
Trend research is a really great class to take that's offered in DAAP, but it's a multi-person elective. So like there were business students taking it. It's fashion, graphic, ID, anyone could take it. I also took a marketing research class through Lindner College of Business, which was great for like survey design and more of the quantitative stuff, which you don't get in research or you don't get in traditional industrial design research. Most of it is qualitative, like interviewing, talking to people, but quantitative is pretty important, especially so many companies are looking to use numbers to justify things. Like qualitative gives them the empathy, like here's a quote that somebody said, but everybody's impressed by numbers and they want the data to back it up. So that marketing research class was really helpful, I think.
I also think like this is kind of an aside, but kind of use whatever opportunity. I know we're all kind of doing remote right now, but like all these conferences that are happening remote and all these things you can sign up for. I think hearing about people who have like launched successful products, like what their research strategy was. For instance, like that talk last night, they were talking about how they used radical empathy to kind of help people understand the entire experience with a speculum and like kind of what that's like to people who, you know, don't need vaginal health. Like, you know, how can you even imagine that unless you kind of do some sort of empathetic exercise? So I think like just seeing, learning these methodologies from people who've actually done them, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. There's also a product innovation course offered through Lindner, and I can hands down promise you you're going to be the best one in the class because it's business students. But it's interesting because you're going to come in with a design research mindset, and they're going to show you like the business way to brainstorm or think about problems. And it's like a new type of method or technique that you wouldn't have access to in the design school, but it is really helpful in a way of reframing problems to come up with new solutions or innovative concepts.
Yeah, I think that trend research class was like my favorite class I ever took at UC. I think Emily Flannery still teaches it. She was like one of the best professors I think I ever had. So definitely recommend that one. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm David. I'm also a third year. I was wondering, and I joined like 20 minutes late, so I apologize if you guys covered this. But I was wondering if you have any advice on like starting a new co-op and, you know, any things that you do like to be successful, or I'm open to anything.
Yeah. Alexis, I don't know if you have anything top of mind right now.
I think housing is always really important. And depending where you're going, so most of my co-ops, every single co-op except my last one, there wasn't another DAAP grad in the area, which Beth always talks about, like connecting with your peers. But if you can find housing through college groups on Facebook or finding other people in that like same age group, having the college experience with them, being their roommate, filling a sublet, that's the best way to guarantee you're going to be with someone your age. They'll probably have things going on that you could just, they're going to feel bad for you because you're coming to this new city with no resources. And they're like, yeah, just like come join our friends and do this with us. And you can make connections, do activities, like experience things faster than if you're trying to find your own things or doing it on your own.
I think also one thing that I think I wish I would have taken more advantage of is like I don't know, sometimes work events they're like a lot and like, you know, it's kind of like pulling teeth to get people to go, but I think you really do make like great connections that way, and it might be like a weird uncomfortable like workplace karaoke. I've done that. It's very uncomfortable, but it's like I don't know, kind of going through those events, you kind of make better, deeper connections. And I think like a lot of mentors I've had just from like kind of getting out of my comfort zone and trying to like connect with them has been helpful in kind of starting my career. and like with that being said, just kind of like keep communication open and like don't be afraid to speak up. You were hired for a reason. They want your opinion.
And if there are other interns at your company, that's also a good route of like talk to them. They're probably also maybe alone, see if they want to do a work happy hour or just get together for a brunch. Who knows? But meet up with them and talk about your work experience, bond through that will also make things a lot easier. Also,
Awesome.
ask
Thank you guys so
questions.
yeah.
Sorry, I just cut you off. Ask questions at your job. Like I have co-ops now and they don't ask questions. They're like, I tell them what to do and they go and do it. And I think they know what they're doing. But then we'll get to the end of the day and I'll ask them, like, how did it go? And they went in a completely different direction than what I was expecting. So if anything is unclear, always ask questions. They would much rather you spend like 30 minutes like talking it out and explaining it over and over than get to the end of the day and be like, whoa, this isn't what I thought we had agreed on you doing today.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a two-way street, but I think definitely agree with that. And I don't know, I felt like when I was a co-op, maybe I just felt like I would seem stupid, but like in reality, like now that we have co-ops and like we're like, you know, we're sharing work with them, it's like I would never think they were stupid for asking a question. Like that's just the dumbest thought. Like I don't know.
If anything,
like I'm
I
stupid.
think yeah, we explained it wrong. It's our fault that you didn't
Yeah.
understand because we
Yeah.
were not clear when we asked you to do something.
You know, because like we're busy and, you know, running around, and if we're asking for help, we obviously need it, and we're kind of rushed and, you know, definitely could have left something out. And that's, I feel like I always tell, I don't know, at least with this round of co-ops, you know, I don't know everything and like I might mess something up, but ask me questions if you have any questions. I just try to keep that communication open. Not everyone is that approachable, and I think, you know, you just kind of have to get comfortable with being a little uncomfortable, so to speak. But
I have another thing. I wish I had done this. So the PAL reviews where they have to go in and fill out the thing about you, hit or miss whether or not they'll do it. But if you're in your like final one-on-one interview, ask them to leave a LinkedIn review of you on your profile.
yes,
That's like such a
yes.
good way to get someone with actual clout to leave like, yeah, this person was a great intern. They were
Yes.
insightful. They were a hard worker, blah, blah, blah. And it
Yep.
is so much more impactful because it's on a public thing versus a PAL review that nobody
Yep.
will ever see.
That's such a good takeaway. I feel like the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me or even thought about me is on LinkedIn, because I asked that, which is like great that we captured that, because not everyone probably thinks that about me, but you know, like it's just nice to like, that's definitely a good, and I think maybe my boss's boss told me to do that and ask my manager to do that, but like he, you know, most of the time people are really willing and they'll write really great things about you. So I definitely can't thank that person enough for doing it.
That was really good advice. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to speak. Seth and I are in the same room, so I think that's why our like thing happened earlier. I was like gonna ask a question. It was like a weird sound. But so you guys mentioned that like this like kind of kind of strategy and like being more of a generalist. I think that was Alexis. Did you have any trouble like when you're trying to pick jobs to apply to, for like if you're such a generalist, like, and you're so interested in so many different fields, like which avenues to go down? And also like, I mean, like even like our first like time meeting with Beth Ann, she's like, what's your niche? And like, I'm having a hard time saying like, I don't know, and like trying to describe that in interviews too. So like any advice on that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the only trouble that I experienced was trouble I created for myself. And let me explain. Like, I think a lot of the times when you look at that list, there are places that like inherently just based on talk and like other people are like more sought after. Like, and I just think like not everyone is the perfect fit for every job. And I think like when you're young, you always try to go after those jobs because you think they're desirable. But I think that strategy is just not you know, helpful to anyone. I think like number one, the company's going to be pissed because like you weren't a good fit anyway, and then number two, you're not going to enjoy yourself because, you know, you feel like you don't like the job. So I just think that's something I wish I would have learned when I was younger. And I think getting back to that T-shaped and being spiky, it's like you can kind of see what skills, like for Alexis's example, it's like she kind of pitched herself as, she's an industrial designer, but she has this great skill in marketing, and that's why Landor should hire her. I think finding, that story of why you should work at a company, I think, if it's kind of seamless in your head and you feel like you're a perfect fit, I think most of the time you are, if you can demonstrate that through your work. And I think being like a generalist, like if you can showcase those kind of the end of the T skills, but you want to just like work in a lot of different industries like I have, it's, go after a more consultancy leaning kind of place that just likes to solve problems. Like, I think, you don't have to, I know Beth is just trying to like make sure the numbers add up and people, if they want to do shoes, they go to the right places. But I think it's perfectly fine for you to brand yourself as this kind of like more consultancy leading problem solver who, you have all these really great hard skills and you may specialize in visualization. Like, I think that's okay. That's just my take on it. But I think don't get caught up with like what everyone wants to do. I think just like have that story yourself, and the more original it is, like the better it's going to serve you.
Yeah, I think about when I went to Beth's office and she asked me that question, I don't think I had an answer for her until my last co-op. Like my last interview, I was like, Beth, this is who I am. This is what I'm gonna do. Let's go. But I think about my previous co-ops. Every time I went to apply to a job, like had an interview, not just picking off the list, had an interview, I would think about the skills that I learned in my previous internships and how could I spin that to be like, these are the skills that I'm bringing to the table that either you want me to have or that I'm going to offer you a new perspective and add value to your team. So like, I think a good example was the first one where I was like industrial design and then marketing and pivoted into Landor, but also my fourth co-op at Deep Local, I'd never done any experiential work and I was actively learning how to use SketchUp at the job. So it's like, but I had marketing and then I had branding and industrial design. So it's like you can always spin those things and just make it clear that you're willing to learn and learn from others on the team all the time.
And I think, like, full disclosure, that Get Spiky like graphic is from Jordan Hildebrandt's website, and she like definitely, like, I think senior year we were all kind of like we're still figuring it out now, but kind of like Alexis said, that like I didn't really have a straight answer. I couldn't just tell Beth like shoes, obviously. So maybe she wasn't as happy with me, but I think the beautiful thing about that Get Spiky diagram is like when you're a student, you can say, okay, I'm good at these skills, and you guys are too, so I can add to your your workload. I can add to the value of your company that way. But I think as you like develop your career, you can go somewhere that doesn't necessarily have those skills, and you can be like, hey, I'm really great at this area and you currently don't have this. How can I help contribute to make your business better, and serve more, offer more capabilities? So I think that's the nice thing about having those T-shaped skills.
And that I think also ties back into the co-ops you have don't have to be it. Like if you're not getting the skills in your co-ops as a third year, you have plenty of time to be strategic about, you have these jobs on the list you want to get, you want to be in research, so you need to start learning about research, read blogs, build it into your projects, and apply those skills so that when you do get an interview with that company, you can present a portfolio project that's still relevant and displays those skills in some way.
Yeah, thank you. That was really helpful.
Of course. Anyone else?
I have another question. I'm wondering, so pie in sky, future vision for both of you. What is your dream job, your like it thing? It could be a job, it could be a master's program, it could be something like way out there. I just want to know, what's it looking like in your dreams?
Ooh. We talk about this a lot, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody asked me this question yesterday, so I feel like I may be more prepared to answer it.
Sweet.
So in previous slide, I said you're gonna have multiple careers, or like maybe you'll have multiple careers. Doing the biomaterial, I say that because I want to have at least 3 careers. I was when we did our senior year, we had to go through this whole thing where you had to pick like, what's your 5-year plan? And we had to do multiple versions of it. So we could see these 5 different trajectories of where our life could go based off of the decisions that we make. And in that, I was like, I could see myself being a UI UX designer. I could see myself being a researcher. I could see myself going to school to get a degree in biology so that I could be a sustainable material designer. Like there are all of these things that I want to do. So in response to your question, I don't have a dream career. I have like 3, but we're going to figure it out as we go.
Yeah. And I think like off of that point, I think we all enjoy a myriad of things. And like I said, I think I'm trying to practice this like more living in the present type of mentality where, you might overlook an opportunity that comes your way that might lead you in one of those directions. So, for instance, like I'm working on a project now at work that like is definitely more medicine based, like pure medicine, surgical, like theory, surgical. Like we're actually developing like a surgical procedure for this device, which is like, in another life probably would have tried to be in medicine and a doctor. And I think this is like a weird back way of doing that. But that's not to say like, I definitely have other interests that I like to do in my spare time. I love scuba diving. My sister is like a underwater photographer, scuba diver. So we, that's something I like to do when I'm not working. And she has a connection that I've kind of made and have helped them make coral polyp molds to kind of replant and do coral restoration. So it's kind of a weird way of like using an ID skill to kind of get into stuff I like. So like any way you can twist your stuff, your skills and like what you're good at to just like do things you like, I think is really cool. And I would love to just like do that. Like that sounds fun. If I could live in like Bali and just help restore coral reefs, that'd be great. We'll see. We'll see if I get there.
Yeah, I will say that that's kind of the plug of the generalist skill base is no matter what you do or what you start out doing, you're going to be building skills over time. And if you're growing and diversifying those skills, by the time you're 10 years out, 15, 20, you could easily pivot into another field or start growing sea polyps. No problem.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the coolest response. Whoa.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has anything else. It's been really fun to just like reminisce.
This isn't really a question. Well, it kind of is, but I also don't really need an answer. I'm like trying to help Craig organize doing a class based on like design research methodology or like some sort of event. So it might be after hours too. Would you guys be interested in like learning more information about that?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely.
Yeah, and I know we might have said this and our contact information is below, but if you guys ever want to like share, just talk about your work, like I said, or just share any kind of projects or stuff you have you want feedback on, or you just want to present it to someone, happy to help and do a kind of quick Teams call or Skype call. I think you'd be surprised like how many professionals are willing to, I don't know, kind of give their time to do that. And I think it just only helps you guys in the long run. So just definitely email us if you have any other questions or just, want to keep in touch.
Yeah, that's another fun plug for reviewing your portfolios at the end of a co-op. If you can have a one-on-one with whoever your mentor was or your team and be like, this is my portfolio, what do you think? They'll help give you much more constructive criticism than you coming back to school and being like, I need to change everything and do this, this, and this with actually no basis for making those changes. Like you get a professional opinion on what changes you should be making instead of trying to redesign your portfolio every time.
Yeah. I think it's always like the daunting, like, oh gosh, I got to start from scratch. But like in reality, like you're just being extra harsh on yourself. It's like not actually bad. And you're just don't know like what to change and it's kind of paralyzed by like just fear of starting.
I'll just change everything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Efficiency, guys. Efficiency.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you so much for taking the time to make this presentation. It's
Yes,
really nice
thank
to
you.
hear from like DAAP alumni and like your insights on the field. And I'm having lots of fun going to these IDSA events.
Yeah, I think it's I wish we would have done these like little talks when we were in school. It just definitely would have helped in just seeing even more specifically like what kind of jobs you could get and just like the nitty gritty of like what the ins and outs are. And yeah, so it's a great idea. Like hats off to Mira and everyone else who planned this. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you guys were a gold mine. So this has blessed our year with such a wealth of information. I can't wait for this to be shared among the masses. I think like wow.
You got a two for one.
Yeah, I definitely today. Today was a day, but it's nice because it's kind of like each of these little talks are like lights at the end of the tunnel. It's like,
yeah,
kind of gets better, or like at least I'm not the only one feeling this way. And yeah. So thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely not alone. And like I said, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or just anything at all, advice. It's free.
Aw.
Yeah, that's a test. We told you to ask for help. We're giving you giving you an in.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys. It's been a pleasure meeting all of you and kind of answering your questions. And yeah.
Thank you.
Future of our design. No problem.
Yeah.
Bye guys.
Good night. Bye. Have a great night.
Bye. You guys too.
Thank you.
Bye.